Hey everybody, so today we're going to be looking at percent of total in Microsoft Excel. Now this is a quick yet powerful tool that allows us to see where one number in our data set stacks up to all the rest. Now if you are an employer, this will work great for employee KPIs. It'll also work great for student grades if you're a teacher and many other applications. But where I think it's the most powerful is with sales data, so that's where we're going to look at it today. I'm going to show you 3 ways to get your percent of total, and then I'm going to show you how to get that percent of total if your data is in a pivot table. So here we have some sales data that has our account manager and their sales. And what we're trying to see is what percentage of the total sales does each account manager have. So the first way I'm going to show you how to get that is using a formula. So we're going to do equals and we're going to select B4. We're going to do divide by and we're going to type sum. Now we have to do sum here because we have to add up our sales or we can't get our percentage. So let's open our parentheses and let's select all of our sales data. Now here what we need to do is we're going to F4 one time because this is a relative cell reference and we need to tell it to only look in these specific cells no matter what happens. So it needs to be an absolute cell reference. So we're going to hit F4 and we're going to close our parentheses and we're going to hit enter. And now we have a number. Go ahead and double click and it will carry it down. So we want this to be a percentage. So we're going to go up to general and we're going to tell it percent. And I'm going to recommend that you increase your decimal point by 1 place and I'm going to show you why. Right now it shows Jessa has 0% in sales. Well, she has a number there, so that just means she's not quite at 1%, but she has sold something, so she's not at 0. So go up here and increase your decimal by 1. Now if we go back down and look at Jessa again, she has 0.4% of the total sales. So the next way we can get our percent of is a function or formula still yet, but it's a little bit more complicated. So we're going to do equals and we're going to type percent of. Open our parentheses and we're going to select cell B4. We're going to do a comma and then we're going to select all of our sales data. Close our parentheses and hit enter. Now we can double click and carry all of this down. And I'm so glad this happened because I forgot to do something and it's a good lesson for you to learn and for me to remember. So if you see you have this little green warning up in the top left-hand corner and it's telling me that I forgot to use the adjacent cells. Well, the step that I forgot was to make this an absolute cell reference. And if you remember, I said we had to do that so it looked there no matter what. So if we do F4, and hit enter, and then we go ahead and make it all go back down, it releases that error. So don't forget to do that like I did. So we're going to go up to percentage. And again, I recommend increasing 1 decimal place and everything looks the same. So this last way I'm going to show you how to get your percent of total or percent of sales is the way that I do it, and it's the way I prefer to do it. Now, I showed the other 2 ways because there are still people who prefer formulas and functions, and that's okay. But this is a more automated way to do it. So if we go ahead and select our data, you will see a quick analysis box that pops up. If you select it and you go to totals and you scroll over, you'll see percent of total. And as you can see, it puts it in there. Now, if we go down to Jessa, you will see when we did it before, her percentage was 0.4. This says 0.38. And the reason for that is this automatically puts 2 decimal places. So depending on whether you want to round or not, you can decrease or increase your decimal places. And now what do we do if our data is in a pivot table? So I'm going to create our pivot table fairly quickly. If you're not familiar with creating a pivot table at all, I do have another tutorial that walks you through that step by step. So what we're going to do is insert our pivot table from table range. It selects everything. I'm going to tell it a new worksheet because if I have it in the same one, I get confused. Tell it okay, and it's created a sheet with our pivot table. So what we're going to do is we're going to move account manager to rows, and we're going to move sales to our values, and then we have our regular pivot table data. Now we want to add our sum of sales or sum of total column to our pivot table. And how we're going to do that is we're going to take our sales field and we're going to duplicate it underneath values. And you can see it says sum of sales too. So we're going to select one of the cells underneath there. We're going to right click. We're going to do show value as, and we're going to do percent of grand total. And as you can see, it also goes out 2 decimal places, but it gives you all of your percentages, and then it shows 100% for your total. Now, one of the other things I want to show you real quick is this can get confusing where it says sales, sales, and depending on how many columns you have. So you can change these, but some of them, you got to kind of trick Excel a little bit. Let me show you what I mean. If we want to change row columns, the header or row labels, if we double click, we can change this pretty easily to account manager. It doesn't give us any errors or anything. If we go to sum of sales and we double click and we try to rename this sales and we tell it okay, it's going to give us an error that already exists because of how it is over here in the pivot table. But if we put a space after sales and we tell it okay, it's going to rename it for us. Now this says sum of sales too, and because I'm naming it something completely different, if we double click on it and I do percent of total or percent of sales and tell it okay, it's going to rename it for us. So that makes it a little bit easier to read. So you may be looking at this and saying, Melissa, this is great, but how do I use this in a practical application? So if these are your account managers and you're looking at this, you may look and see you have extreme highs and then you have extreme lows. And you have to figure out why that is. Let's just look at Jessa. She is 0.38 or 0.4%, however you do your decimal point, in our sales. And why is that? Does she not have enough region or customers that she can go after assigned to her? Does she have a performance problem? Is it a training issue? Are your KPIs set too high? So this is very powerful to give you insight into your sales cycle and how you may need to adjust it. And that's it for today. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, follow, and all of that good stuff. And don't forget to hop on out to my website, melcompton.com, for written instructions for this tutorial and so much more. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.